step aboard the opulent sapphire yacht, where a glamorous weekend cruise turns deadly. Sir Reginald Haverford is found murdered, a dagger in his heart, a note screaming, "Traitor." Hercule Poirot, the brilliant Belgian detective, unravels a web of secrets, betrayal, and hidden pasts, with a cast of suspects, each hiding motives of love, greed, and vengeance. Poirot's little grey cells face their ultimate test. Who struck the fatal blow? In this classic Agatha Christie-style mystery, every clue counts, and the shocking truth will keep you guessing until the final reveal. Chapter 1. The Invitation to the Sapphire Yacht. The late summer sun cast a golden haze over the Devon coast, where the cliffs met the sea in a restless embrace. The small harbour of Torquay glittered under the light, its waters alive with the gentle bobbing of yachts and fishing boats. Among them, moored like a queen among her subjects, was the Sapphire Yacht, a sleek vessel of polished wood and gleaming brass, owned by the enigmatic Sir Reginald Haverford. It was to this vessel that Captain Arthur Hastings, loyal friend and occasional chronicler of Hercule Poirot, found himself summoned on an August afternoon in 1928. Hastings stood on the quay, his straw hat tilted against the sun, a telegram crumpled in his hand. The message was brief, yet it carried an air of urgency that piqued his curiosity. Sir Reginald, a retired financier with a reputation for lavish parties and a shadowed past, had invited a select group to join him for a weekend cruise along the coast. The telegram, addressed to both Hastings and Poirot, had been explicit. "Your presence is requested aboard the Sapphire Yacht. A matter of some delicacy requires Poirot's unique talents. Discretion assured. R. H." "Poirot, my dear fellow, what do you make of it?" Hastings had asked that morning in their London flat, as Poirot, impeccable in a dove-grey suit, sipped his tisane with deliberate care. Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign of amusement or irritation. Hastings could never quite tell. "Mon ami, Sir Reginald is a man who does not summon Hercule Poirot for trifles. There is a puzzle here, a knot to be untied. And where there is a knot, there is often danger." His green eyes gleamed with anticipation. Now, as Hastings approached the yacht, the breeze carried the scent of salt and tar, mingled with the faint perfume of wealth. The Sapphire Yacht was no mere pleasure boat. It was a floating palace, its deck adorned with cushioned lounges and crystal glassware, ready for the evening's festivities. A steward in crisp whites greeted Hastings, taking his valise with a deferential nod. "Captain Hastings, sir? Sir Reginald is expecting you. The other guests are already aboard." Hastings climbed the gangway, his eyes scanning the deck. The guest pages, others from whispered rumours in London's clubs. There was Lady Eleanor Haverford, Sir Reginald's young wife, her auburn hair catching the sunlight as she laughed at something a man in a navy blazer said. The man, Hastings noted, was Victor Crane, a stockbroker whose sharp dealings had made him both rich and mistrusted. Nearby stood Miss Clara Pennington, a novelist of some repute, her sharp eyes darting about, as if cataloguing every detail for her next book. A tall, dour figure in clerical black, Reverend Thomas Blake, sipped a lemonade, his expression suggesting he disapproved of the entire affair. And there, lingering at the rail, was Dr. Malcolm Fraser, a Harley Street physician with a reputation for discretion in matters of high society's health. The final guest, a woman in her late 30s with a severe bun and a grey silk dress, was introduced as Miss Agnes Ward, Sir Reginald's private secretary. Her demeanour was one of quiet efficiency, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease as they met Hastings. "Where is Poirot?" Lady Eleanor asked, her voice light, but with an edge of impatience. "Sir Reginald spoke so highly of him. He'll be along shortly," Hastings replied, checking his watch. It was precisely 4:45 p.m., and Poirot, ever punctual, would not miss the yacht's departure at 5. "He's attending to a small matter in town." As if on cue, a familiar figure appeared at the gangway. Hercule Poirot, resplendent in a cream linen suit and a Panama hat, stepped aboard with the grace of a man who knew his entrance was anticipated. His moustache, waxed to perfection, quivered as he surveyed the scene. "Bonsoir, mes amis," he said, his voice carrying a melodic precision. "Hercule Poirot is here at the service of Sir Reginald Haverford. And what a charming company we have!" His eyes, keen as a hawk's, swept over the guests, lingering on each face as if committing it to memory. Sir Reginald emerged from the cabin, a robust man in his 60s with a florid complexion and a hearty laugh. "Poirot, Hastings, welcome aboard!" His handshake was firm, but his eyes darted nervously to the horizon. "We'll cast off soon. A weekend of relaxation, good company, and perhaps a little business." The word business hung in the air, and Hastings sensed a ripple of tension among the guests. Clara Pennington's pen paused over her notebook. Victor Crane's smile tightened. Even the Reverend Blake's dour expression deepened. As the yacht's engines hummed to life, pulling away from the quay, Hastings leaned toward Poirot. "What do you make of it, old chap? Sir Reginald's hiding something." Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. "Naturellement, mon ami. Sir Reginald has summoned Poirot, and where Poirot is summoned—" Sapphire Yacht passed in a blur of champagne and polite conversation. The guests dined on deck under a canopy of stars, the table laden with lobster, pheasant, and a chilled chablis. Sir Reginald played the genial host, regaling them with tales of his financial triumphs, while Lady Eleanor charmed with her wit. Yet Hastings noted undercurrents: Clara Pennington's sharp questions about Sir Reginald's investments, Victor Crane's veiled barbs at the financier's success, and Miss Ward's quiet vigilance, as if she were guarding a secret. At precisely 9:30 p.m., as the dessert plates were cleared, Sir Reginald rose, tapping his glass. "A toast," he declared, "to new ventures and old friends." The guests raised their glasses, but Hastings caught a glance between Dr. Fraser and Miss Ward, a fleeting, conspiratorial look that vanished as quickly as it appeared. By midnight, the yacht was anchored off a secluded cove, the sea calm and the moon casting silver ripples across the water. The guests retired to their cabins, save for Poirot, who lingered on deck, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Something troubles you, Poirot?" Hastings asked, joining him. "Oui, mon ami. The air, it is too still. The smiles, they are too polite. There is a storm brewing, Hastings, not in the sky but in the hearts of those aboard. And Hercule Poirot, he will be ready when it breaks." As Hastings turned to retire, a sharp cry pierced the night. It came from the direction of Sir Reginald's cabin. The deck, moments ago serene, erupted into chaos as footsteps pounded and voices rose in alarm. Hastings raced toward the sound, Poirot at his heels, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. They found Lady Eleanor outside her husband's cabin, her face pale, her hands trembling. "Reginald," she gasped. He's dead." The door swung open, revealing Sir Reginald Haverford sprawled across his desk, a dagger plunged into his chest. Blood pooled on the mahogany, staining a sheaf of papers. The clock on the wall read 12:15 a.m. Poirot stepped forward, his expression unreadable. He knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over the dagger's hilt. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "The game, it has begun." Hastings stared at the scene, his heart pounding. The closed circle of the Sapphire Yacht had just become a stage for murder, and Hercule Poirot was at its center, ready to unravel the threads of a crime that promised to be as intricate as it was deadly. Chapter 2. The scene of the crime. The air inside Sir Reginald Haverford's cabin was heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the faint scent of cigar smoke, a grim contrast to the salty breeze that drifted through the open porthole. The clock on the wall, its hands frozen at 12:15 a.m., seemed to mock the chaos that had erupted aboard the Sapphire Yacht. Hercule Poirot stood motionless beside the body, his sharp green eyes scanning every detail of the scene, while Captain near the door, his stomach churning at the sight of Sir Reginald's lifeless form. Sir Reginald lay slumped across his desk, his head tilted at an unnatural angle. The dagger, an ornate piece with a carved ivory handle, protruded from his chest, pinning a blood-soaked letter to his waistcoat. The letter, half obscured by crimson, bore a single word in bold ink: traitor. Papers were scattered across the desk. Financial documents by the look of them. some smudged with blood, others fluttering as the sea breeze stirred the air. A glass of brandy, untouched, stood beside an ashtray containing a single cigar stub. Lady Eleanor Haverford, still trembling in her silk dressing gown, clung to the arm of Dr. Malcolm Fraser, who had arrived moments after the cry. Her auburn hair was dishevelled, her eyes wide with shock. I heard a noise," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought he was working late, as he often does. Then I found him like this." Poirot's moustache twitched as he turned to her. "Madame, you will please recount precisely what occurred. Every detail. It is of importance." Lady Eleanor swallowed, her gaze flickering to the body. "I retired to my cabin at 11. Reginald said he had papers to review, something about a new investment. I was reading when I heard a thud, then a cry. I rushed here and, oh God, I saw him." She buried her face in her hands. Dr. Fraser, his face pale but composed, spoke up. "I examined him immediately, Monsieur Poirot. He's been dead no more than half an hour. The dagger went straight to the heart. Death was instantaneous." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the air above the desk, as if mapping an invisible pattern. "And you, Doctor, where were you at the time of this tragedy?" "In my cabin, reviewing medical notes," Fraser replied, his tone steady. "I heard Lady Eleanor scream and came at once." Hastings, unable to contain himself, interjected. "Good Lord, Poirot, who could have done this? We're miles from shore, and there's only a handful of us aboard." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Patience, mon ami. The Sapphire Yacht is a small world, but even small worlds have their secrets. We shall discover them, one by one." The other guests, roused by the commotion, gathered outside the cabin, their faces a mix of horror and curiosity. Victor Crane, the stockbroker, pushed forward, his navy blazer rumpled. "What's happened? Is Sir Reginald—" "Murdered," Poirot said simply. Wrought. Miss Agnes Ward, Sir Reginald's secretary, stood apart, her grey dress blending into the shadows. Her face was a mask of calm, but her fingers twisted a handkerchief with quiet intensity. "Sir Reginald had enemies," she said softly. "But aboard his own yacht." Poirot's gaze lingered on her. "Enemies, mademoiselle? You will tell Poirot more of this, n'est-ce pas?" Before she could reply, the yacht's captain, a weathered man named Jenkins, appeared with 2 crew members. "Monsieur Poirot, I've secured the deck. No one's left the yacht, and no boats have approached. Whoever did this is still aboard." "Bon," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "A closed circle, just as I prefer. Now, let us proceed with method. Captain Jenkins, you will ensure no one enters this cabin until I have completed my examination. Hastings, you will assist me." Hastings nodded, though his heart raced. He had seen Poirot at work before, but the Belgian's calm in the face of such violence was almost unnerving. Poirot began his inspection, moving with the precision of a watchmaker. He examined the dagger, noting its intricate carvings, a serpent entwined around a rose. "An unusual weapon," he murmured, "not one carried lightly." He turned to the desk, his gloved fingers lifting the bloodied letter. The word traitor was written in a bold, deliberate hand, the ink still fresh. Beneath it, the paper appeared to be a draft of a contract, though the details were obscured by blood. Poirot's eyes narrowed as he scanned the scattered documents, ledgers, share certificates, and a letter addressed to Sir Reginald from a firm in London, marked urgent. "Intéressant," Poirot said, pocketing the letter with care. He moved to the porthole, which was open just wide enough for a man's arm to pass through. The sea beyond was calm, the horizon unbroken. No signs of forced entry, he noted. The killer, they were already inside. Hastings glanced at the guests, now huddled in the corridor. "But who, Poirot? They were all at dinner earlier, and the crew, surely they're accounted for." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The alibis, Hastings. They are like the pieces of a puzzle. We must collect them all before we see the picture. Let us begin. He stepped into the corridor, addressing the group with a calm authority. Mesdames et messieurs, a crime has been committed, and Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth. Each of you will account for your movements between 11 o'clock and the moment of Lady Eleanor's cry. You will speak with me one by one in the saloon. Captain Jenkins, you will provide a list of the crew and their duties. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, but none protested. Poirot's presence, though diminutive, commanded obedience. He gestured for Lady Eleanor to follow him first, and she complied, her steps unsteady. In the saloon, a luxurious room of polished wood and velvet cushions, Poirot sat opposite Lady Eleanor, his notebook open. Hastings stood by, scribbling notes, as Poirot began his questioning. Madame, you say you heard a thud and a cry. At what time precisely? Lady Eleanor hesitated. I'm not certain. Perhaps a few minutes past midnight. I wasn't watching the clock. And you are alone in your cabin? Yes. Reginald and I have separate cabins. He often works late. Poirot's eyes flickered to her hands, which trembled slightly. And this noise, it was loud enough to alarm you? It was unusual. A heavy sound, like something falling. Then the cry. It was brief, almost cut off. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. You mentioned Sir Reginald's work. These papers, they were important? She bit her lip. He was always secretive about his business. Investments, partnerships. He said this weekend was to finalize something big. Merci, madame. That will be all for now. As Lady Eleanor left, Poirot turned to Hastings. She is distressed, yes, but there is something she does not say. The cry, the thud. Perhaps they are not in the order she claims. Hastings frowned. You think she's lying? Not lying, mon ami. Omitting. And in omission, there is often truth. One by one, the guests were questioned. Victor Crane claimed to have been smoking on deck until 11:30, seen by a crew member. Clara Pennington said she was writing in her cabin, though no one could confirm it. Reverend Blake insisted he was praying alone, his alibi unprovable. Dr. Fraser reiterated his story of reviewing notes. And Miss Ward said she was organizing Sir Reginald's correspondence until midnight, retiring just before the cry. Each account was precise, yet Poirot's expression grew more thoughtful with every interview. They are careful, Hastings, he said as the last guest left. Too careful. The truth, it hides in the spaces between their words. As the clock struck 2 a.m., Poirot returned to the cabin, his gaze falling on the dagger once more. This weapon, he said, it is not merely a tool of murder. It is a message, and Hercule Poirot will decipher it. The yacht rocked gently, its isolation both a comfort and a curse. Somewhere among the guests, a killer lurked, and Hastings knew that Poirot's little grey cells were already at work, piecing together the puzzle of Sir Reginald's death. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Hercule Poirot. The sapphire yacht lay anchored in the stillness of the cove, its silhouette a dark shape against the moonlit sea.
Poirot's arrival on the yacht had been no accident, though the precise nature of Sir Reginald's summons remained shrouded in mystery. The telegram, now tucked in Poirot's waistcoat pocket, had hinted at a matter of delicacy, but the Belgian detective had shared little with Hastings beyond a cryptic remark. Sir Reginald feared something, mon ami, and now it seems his fears were justified. The guests, dismissed after their initial interviews, had retreated to their cabins, though Hastings doubted any would sleep. The crew, under Captain Jenkins' stern command, patrolled the deck, ensuring no one tampered with the crime scene. Poirot, however, seemed unperturbed by the hour or the gravity of the situation. His eyes, bright and piercing, moved from his notes to the saloon's opulent decor. A chandelier of cut crystal, velvet drapes, a bar stocked with decanters that gleamed in the lamplight. Hastings, Poirot said, breaking the silence, you are restless. Tell me, what troubles you? Hastings turned, his brow furrowed. "It's this whole business, Poirot. A man murdered on his own yacht, surrounded by his guests. Friends, or so he thought. And that dagger. It's so deliberate, so personal. Who would carry such a thing?" Poirot's moustache curved slightly. "Précisément, mon ami. The dagger is not a weapon of impulse. It is chosen, carried, concealed. It speaks of intent, of passion, perhaps of betrayal. And the word traitor on that paper. It is a clue, yes, but also a challenge." "A challenge," Hastings echoed. The killer wishes us to know their motive or to think we know it. But Hercule Poirot, he does not accept the obvious. We must dig deeper." Before Hastings could reply, Captain Jenkins entered, his weathered face drawn. "Monsieur Poirot, I've spoken to the crew. All were at their posts or in their quarters at the time of the murder. I've checked the log, no boats approached, and the sea's been calm. Whoever did this is one of us." Poirot nodded, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. "Merci, Captain, and the crew, they are all accounted for. No one absent, no one behaving strangely." Jenkins hesitated. "Well, there's young Tom, the cabin boy. He's a bit shaken. Says he saw someone on deck near Sir Reginald's cabin around midnight, but he couldn't make out who. It was dark, and he was hauling lines at the stern." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Intéressant. This Tom, you will bring him to me. And the deck, it is well lit." "Only by lanterns at night," Jenkins replied. "The bow and stern are bright, but the side passages near the cabins are shadowed." "Bon, a shadow. It is a perfect place for secrets. Now, Captain, you will please fetch the cabin boy." As Jenkins left, Hastings leaned closer. "Poirot, do you think the boy's telling the truth? He could be mistaken, or lying." Poirot, a lanky youth of 17 with nervous hands,
Wide eyes, was ushered in by Captain Jenkins. His uniform was slightly askew, and his face bore the pallor of someone who had seen more than he wished. "Monsieur Tom," Poirot began, his voice gentle yet commanding, "you will tell Hercule Poirot exactly what you saw. Every detail. It is important." Tom swallowed, glancing at Jenkins for reassurance. "I was on deck, sir, near the stern, coiling ropes. It was just past midnight, I reckon, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. I saw someone move along the port side near Sir Reginald's cabin. They were quick, like they didn't want to be seen. I thought it was one of the guests, maybe heading to their cabin, but it felt odd." "Odd how?" Poirot pressed, his pen poised. "The way they moved, sir. Stealthy-like. And they were wearing something dark, a coat or cloak. I couldn't see their face." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "And this figure, they went toward Sir Reginald's cabin or away from it?" "Toward it, sir, I think. It was hard to tell in the dark." "Merci, Tom. You have been most helpful. You may go, but you will speak of this to no one." As the boy left, Poirot turned to Hastings. "A figure in the dark, mon ami. A shadow that moves with purpose. This is our first thread, but it is tangled. We must unravel it with care." The rest of the night passed in a blur of activity. Poirot insisted on a second examination of the crime scene, this time with Captain Jenkins present to confirm the yacht's layout. The cabin, though small, was a marvel of luxury. Mahogany paneling, a narrow bed with silk sheets, a wardrobe of tailored suits. The porthole, still open, offered no clues. The sea beyond was too deep for anything to be discarded unnoticed. The desk, however, yielded more. Among the scattered papers, Poirot found a small key, its head engraved with the initials R.H. It fit no lock in the cabin, a fact that intrigued him. "This key," he said, holding it to the light. "It is not for this room. Perhaps a safe, a box, a secret. We shall see." Hastings, stifling a yawn, glanced at his watch. It was nearly 3 a.m. "Poirot, shouldn't we let the police handle this? We can radio for them at dawn." Poirot's expression was one of mild reproach. "The police, Hastings, they will trample the delicate threads of this mystery. No, Hercule Poirot was summoned for a reason. Sir Reginald knew of a danger, and now he is dead. Agnes Ward, ever composed, arranged a tray of pastries with mechanical precision. Poirot entered, his cream suit immaculate despite the sleepless night. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "A crime has been committed, and Hercule Poirot is now in charge. You will remain on this yacht until I have completed my inquiries. Each of you has a story, and each story has a flaw. I will find it." A ripple of protest rose, but Poirot raised a hand. "Silence, s'il vous plaît. We begin with the facts. Sir Reginald was murdered between midnight and 12:15 a.m. A dagger, most distinctive, was used. A note bearing the word traitor was left, and a figure was seen near his cabin. You will each provide a written account of your movements, to be given to Captain Hastings by noon." Victor Crane scoffed. "This is absurd. I was on deck, smoking. Ask the crew." "And yet," Poirot said, his eyes locking onto Crane's, "the crew saw you at 11:30. What of the minutes after?" Crane's face reddened, but he said nothing. Clara Pennington's pen paused, her lips curving slightly. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "you're quite the detective. I shall enjoy watching you work." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Merci, mademoiselle. But it is not I who am watched. It is you, all of you." As the guests dispersed, Hastings leaned toward Poirot. "You're stirring them up, old chap, trying to flush out the killer." "Précisément. The guilty, they will squirm. The innocent, they will merely complain. We shall see who does which." The morning stretched on, the yacht a prison of luxury. Poirot, tireless, began mapping the alibis, cross-referencing times and locations. The cabin boy's sighting, the key, the note, all were pieces of a puzzle that only Hercule Poirot could solve. And as the sun climbed higher, Hastings knew the Belgian's little grey cells were already weaving the threads of truth into a pattern that would, in time, reveal a murderer. Chapter 4. The questions begin. The morning sun climbed higher, casting a relentless glare across the deck of the Sapphire yacht, where the air was thick with unease. The guests, confined to the saloon under Hercule Poirot's orders, sat in strained silence, their breakfast plates barely touched. The clink of porcelain and the distant cry of gulls were the only sounds, save for the occasional murmur of protest or nervous cough. Captain Arthur Hastings, stationed near the door, watched the group with a growing sense of disquiet. Each face, Lady Eleanor's pale and drawn, Victor Crane's flushed with irritation, Clara Pennington's sharp and observant, seemed to hide a secret, and Poirot, seated at the head of the table, was determined to uncover them all. Poirot's note deck passages and key locations. The Belgian detective's eyes, bright and unyielding, moved from the diagram to the guests, as if measuring the distance between their words and the truth. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel, "we are gathered to establish the facts of Sir Reginald Haverford's murder. Each of you has provided a written account of your movements between 11 o'clock last night and the moment of Lady Eleanor's cry at 12:15 a.m. These accounts, they are instructive, but not complete. Hercule Poirot will now ask questions, and you will answer with precision. The truth, it cannot hide forever." Victor Crane leaned back, his arms crossed. "This is preposterous, Poirot. I told you I was on deck, smoking until 11:30. A crewman saw me. What more do you want?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "What I want, Monsieur Crane, is the truth of the 15 minutes after. You say you returned to your cabin, alone, unseen. The deck, it is not so large that you vanish entirely." Crane's jaw tightened. "I was in my cabin, reading. I don't keep a diary of every step." "Dommage," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "For in a murder, every step counts.
Tell me, what did you read? Crane hesitated, his eyes narrowing. A financial report. Shares in Haverford's latest venture. Intéressant. And this report, it was satisfactory? Crane's lips pressed into a thin line. It was complicated. Haverford's ventures always were. Poirot made a note, his pen moving with deliberate care. Hastings, watching, felt a familiar thrill. Poirot was circling, probing, seeking the crack in the facade. He turned to Clara Pennington, whose pen had not stopped moving since breakfast began. "Mademoiselle Pennington," Poirot said, "you are a writer of mysteries, n'est-ce pas? You observe, you note, you create. What did you observe last night?" Clara's eyes gleamed, as if she relished the challenge. "I was in my cabin writing. A new novel, set on a yacht, as it happens. I heard nothing unusual until Lady Eleanor's cry. But I did notice earlier at dinner that Sir Reginald seemed distracted. He kept glancing at his watch, as if expecting something." Poirot's head tilted. "And this watch? You saw it clearly?" "Oh yes, gold with a chain. He checked it at least 3 times during dessert." "Merci. And your writing? It kept you awake until midnight?" Clara smiled faintly. "A writer's muse is a restless one, Monsieur Poirot. I often work late." Poirot's gaze shifted to Reverend Thomas Blake, whose sins of this world. "Sir Reginald's death, it is a judgment." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A judgment, you say? You knew Sir Reginald well?" "Well enough," Blake replied, his voice low. "He was a man of wealth, but not of virtue. His dealings were not always righteous." "Vraiment? You will elaborate, perhaps?" Blake's lips tightened. "I will say no more. Judge not, lest ye be judged." Poirot made another note, his expression unreadable. Hastings, scribbling in his own notebook, caught a glance from Miss Agnes Ward, Sir Reginald's secretary. Her grey eyes were steady, but her fingers still twisted her handkerchief, betraying a nervous energy. "Mademoiselle Ward," Poirot said, turning to her, "you were Sir Reginald's confidant, his organizer. You say you were arranging his correspondence until midnight. This correspondence, it was urgent?" Miss Ward nodded, her voice calm but measured. "Sir Reginald was preparing for a meeting in London next week. Contracts, investments, his usual business. I finished sorting the papers and retired to my cabin." "And these papers?" Poirot pressed. "They were on his desk when he died?" Her eyes flickered, almost imperceptibly. I suppose so. I left them there at 11. Yet some were scattered, stained with blood, and one bore the word traitor. You saw no such note when you left?" "No," she said quickly. "Nothing like that." Poirot's smile was faint but sharp. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your memory, it is most helpful." Finally, he turned to Dr. Malcolm Fraser, whose professional calm seemed unshaken. "Doctor, you were in your cabin reviewing notes, medical notes, you said. But Sir Reginald, he was in good health?" Fraser nodded. "As far as I knew. He consulted me occasionally, minor ailments, nothing serious. I was in my cabin until I heard the cry." "And yet," Poirot said, "you were quick to examine the body. Most efficient. You noticed nothing else in the cabin? No clue, no detail?" Fraser's brow furrowed. "Only the dagger and the blood. It was a shocking scene." Poirot closed his notebook with a snap. "Bon, you have all been most cooperative. For now, you will remain on the yacht. Captain Jenkins, you will ensure no one leaves their cabin without my permission." A murmur of protest rose, but Poirot's raised hand silenced it. "The killer is among us, mes amis. Hercule Poirot does not rest until the truth is revealed."
As the guests dispersed, Hastings followed Poirot to the desk. Found on Sir Reginald's desk. This key, it unlocks more than a door. It unlocks a motive. We must find what it fits. Hastings frowned. But how? The yacht's not that big, and we've searched the cabin. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The yacht, it is small, but the human heart, it is vast. We will search not just the rooms, but the souls of those aboard. The morning wore on, with Poirot moving methodically through the yacht, questioning the crew and examining the deck. The cabin boy, Tom, reiterated his story, but could add no details. The crew's alibis were solid. Most were in the engine room or galley at the time of the murder. Yet Poirot's attention kept returning to the guests' accounts, each one polished yet incomplete. At noon, Poirot called for the written statements, which Hastings collected. Each was brief, reiterating the verbal accounts, but Poirot's eyes lingered on Clara Pennington's, written in her precise, looping hand. She writes as if crafting a story, he murmured. But whose? By early afternoon, Poirot had mapped the alibis on his diagram, noting times and locations. Victor Crane's 11:30 sighting by the crew left a gap. Clara's writing was unverified. Blake's prayers were solitary. Fraser's notes were private. And Miss Ward's correspondence raised questions about the papers on the desk. Hastings, Poirot said, we have a puzzle, but the pieces do not yet fit. The dagger, the note, the key, they point to a plan, a purpose. But the heart of this crime, it is not yet clear. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the deck, Poirot stood alone, his cane tapping a slow rhythm. Hastings watched him, knowing the little grey cells were at work, weaving a web that would, in time, ensnare a killer. But for now, the sapphire yacht remained a floating enigma, its secrets locked as tightly as the key in Poirot's hand. The red herrings. The afternoon sun hung low over the sapphire yacht, its rays glinting off the polished brass railings as the vessel rocked gently in the secluded cove. The air was thick with the scent of salt and suspicion, and the guests, confined to the saloon under Hercule Poirot's watchful eye, grew increasingly restless. Captain Arthur Hastings, stationed near the saloon's entrance, felt the weight of their unease. The murder of Sir Reginald Haverford had cast a pall over the yacht, and Poirot's relentless questioning had stirred the pot, leaving everyone on edge. Poirot stood at the head of the table, his cream at a juncture most delicate. A man is dead, and among you is the one who struck the fatal blow. But the path to truth is clouded by, how do you say, les herrings rouges, the red herrings. Let us clear the air. Victor Crane, the stockbroker, was the first to bristle. His face, already flushed from the morning's interrogations, reddened further. This is outrageous, Poirot. You're treating us like criminals. I told you I was on deck until 11:30, then in my cabin. The crew saw me. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Oui, Monsieur Crane. The crew saw you at 11:30, smoking by the starboard rail, but the murder occurred at 12:15, or shortly before. Where were you in those 45 minutes? Reading, you say, but no one saw you enter your cabin. A man of your prominence does not go unnoticed. Crane's fists clenched. Are you accusing me? I had no reason to kill Haverford. We were partners. His success was mine. Partners, peut-être, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. But partnerships, they can sour. Sir Reginald's ventures, they were not always profitable for all, n'est-ce pas? A murmur rippled through the saloon. Lady Eleanor, her auburn hair pinned haphazardly, looked up sharply. "What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot? Reginald was respected in business." Poirot turned to her, his gaze piercing. "Respected, madame, or feared?" The word traitor was written on the note pinned to his body. A strong word, full of passion. Who felt betrayed by Sir Reginald? Lady Eleanor's lips parted, but no words came. Hastings, watching closely, noted the flicker of fear in her eyes. Poirot's questions were like darts, each one aimed at a hidden nerve. Before Crane could protest further, Captain Jenkins entered, his weathered face grim. "Monsieur Poirot, we found something." In the crew's quarters, hidden in a locker, he held out a small cloth bundle, which Poirot unwrapped with gloved hands. Inside was a pair of leather gloves, stained with what appeared to be blood. A collective gasp rose from the guests. "Blood," Poirot said, holding the gloves to the light. "Fresh, by the look of it." "Captain, whose locker?" Jenkins hesitated. "Tom, sir. The cabin boy." A murmur of shock swept the room. Clara Pennington's pen scratched furiously, her eyes alight with interest. Reverend Blake muttered something about the wages of sin, while Dr.
"Aren't mine. I never saw them before."
Poirot held up a hand. "Calm yourself, Tom. You will tell Hercule Poirot the truth. These gloves, they were in your locker. How did they come to be there?"
"I don't know, sir." Tom's voice cracked. "I was in the galley after my shift, helping cook. Someone must have put them there."
"Vraiment?"
Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And who has access to the crew's quarters?" "Any of us, sir," Tom said. "The lockers aren't locked. Anyone could have slipped in."
Poirot nodded, dismissing the boy with a wave. "Merci, Tom. You will remain where Captain Jenkins can see you." As Tom left, Poirot turned to the guests, holding the gloves aloft. "A red herring, perhaps. The gloves, they are convenient, too convenient. A killer does not leave such evidence unless they wish it to be found. But why? To accuse the boy? Or to distract from another?" Clara Pennington spoke up, her voice sharp.
"Monsieur Poirot, you're suggesting someone planted those gloves to frame Tom. But who would benefit?"
Poirot's smile was faint. "A question most astute, mademoiselle. The one who benefits is the one who fears exposure, and Hercule Poirot will find them." The discovery of the gloves shifted suspicion toward the crew, and Hastings noted the guests' relief, particularly Victor Crane, who seemed eager to deflect attention. But Poirot was not so easily swayed. He returned to his diagram, marking the crew's quarters and the path to Sir Reginald's cabin. "The gloves, they are a clue, yes, but not the truth. The truth lies elsewhere." That afternoon, Poirot resumed his interviews, focusing on the gaps in the alibis. He called Miss Agnes Ward back to the saloon, her grey silk dress as neat as ever, though her handkerchief was now a crumpled ball in her hands. "Mademoiselle Ward," Poirot began, "you were Sir Reginald's secretary. You knew his business, his secrets, the papers on his desk, contracts, shares, a letter marked urgent. What can you tell me of them?" Miss Ward's eyes flickered to the floor. "They were routine, Monsieur Poirot. Investments in a new shipping venture. Sir Reginald was excited about it." "Excited?" Poirot's voice was soft, almost coaxing. "Or anxious? The word traitor suggests a betrayal. Did Sir Reginald betray someone in this venture?" Her fingers tightened on the handkerchief. I don't know. He was secretive, even with me. He said the deal would make enemies, but he didn't say who." Poirot made a note. "And the key, mademoiselle? The one found on his desk engraved with R.H.? You recognize it?" She shook her head too quickly. "No. He had many keys, safes, boxes. I didn't keep track." "Dommage," Poirot said, his eyes never leaving her. "Reacted to the key." "Oui, mon ami. She knows more than she says. But she is not alone. They all hide, and they all point fingers." The day wore on, with Poirot cross-referencing alibis against the yacht's layout. Victor Crane's gap between 11:30 and 12:15 remained unaccounted for. Clara Pennington's claim of writing was unverified, her cabin conveniently near Sir Reginald's. Reverend Blake's solitary prayers offered no alibi, and Dr. Fraser's calm demeanor seemed almost too perfect. Lady Eleanor, meanwhile, had been vague about the timing of the cry she heard, a story shifting slightly with each retelling. By evening, Poirot gathered the guests again, his expression grave. "Mes amis, the gloves. They are a distraction, but they tell us something. The killer is clever, planting evidence to mislead, but Hercule Poirot is not misled. The dagger, the note, the key, these are the true clues, and they point to a motive rooted in betrayal." Lady Eleanor gasped.
Betrayal? But who would Reginald betray?
Poirot's eyes swept the room. "That, madame, is what we will discover. Tomorrow we dig deeper. For now, you will remain under Captain Jenkins' watch." As the guests dispersed, Hastings followed Poirot to the deck, where the detective stood gazing at the darkening sea. "The gloves, Poirot," Hastings said. "They're a dead end, aren't they?" "Not a dead end, mon ami. A signpost. The killer wishes us to chase shadows, but Hercule Poirot chases only the truth, and the truth, it is close." The yacht rocked gently, its isolation a reminder of the closed circle in which a murderer hid. Hastings shivered, knowing that Poirot's little grey cells were weaving a net, and soon someone would be caught. The dawn broke over the sapphire yacht with a deceptive calm. The sea, a mirror of pale gold under the rising sun. Yet aboard the vessel, the atmosphere was anything but serene. The murder of Sir Reginald Haverford hung over the guests like a storm cloud, and Hercule Poirot's relentless pursuit of the truth had set nerves on edge. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing on the deck as the morning breeze ruffled his hair, felt the weight of the mystery pressing down. The bloodied gloves, the dagger, the note marked traitor, each clue seemed to point in a different direction. Yet Poirot's calm assurance suggested he was closing in on the truth. Inside the saloon, Poirot sat at the mahogany table, his notebook open and his diagram of the yacht's layout spread before him. The guests, summoned once more, sat in uneasy silence, their faces a gallery of suspicion and fatigue. Lady Eleanor Haverford's eyes were shadowed, her hands clasped tightly around a cup of tea. Victor Crane,
Reverend Thomas Blake sat rigid, his lips moving in silent prayer, while Dr. Malcolm Fraser maintained his professional composure, though his fingers betrayed a slight tremor. Miss Agnes Ward, Sir Reginald's secretary, was as composed as ever, but her handkerchief, now frayed, hinted at an inner turmoil. Poirot rose, his cream suit pristine despite the sleepless nights. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice a melodic blend of authority and calm. "We approach the heart of this mystery. The clues, they are many, but one stands out, a detail so small, yet so significant, that it begins to unravel the web of deception. Hercule Poirot has observed, and now he will reveal." Hastings leaned forward, his pulse quickening. Poirot's flair for the dramatic was well known, but it was always backed by meticulous logic. The guests, too, seemed to sense a shift, their eyes fixed on the diminutive detective. Poirot held up a single sheet of paper, one of the documents found on Sir Reginald's desk. It was a financial ledger, its columns filled with neat figures, though one entry was circled in red ink. "This ledger," Poirot said, "records transactions for Sir Reginald's latest venture, a shipping company, Haverford Lines. The entry circled here, it is for a sum of £50,000, withdrawn 2 days ago. Yet the recipient is not named. Curious, n'est-ce pas?" Victor Crane shifted uncomfortably. Haverford was always cagey about his deals. That's no surprise. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Cagey, Monsieur Crane? Or secretive for a reason? This sum, it was not for a legitimate partner. It was, I believe, a payment to silence someone, or to betray them." A gasp escaped Lady Eleanor. Betray? Reginald would never. Madame, Poirot interrupted gently. The word traitor was pinned to his body. Someone believed he betrayed them. This ledger. It is a clue to their identity. Poirot set the ledger down and drew the small key from his pocket, its engraved initials R.H. catching the light. And this key, found among the papers, it does not fit any lock in Sir Reginald's cabin. I have searched, but there is another possibility. A safe, perhaps, hidden elsewhere on this yacht. Mademoiselle Ward, you were his secretary. You knew his habits. Where is this safe? Miss Ward's composure faltered, her fingers tightening on her handkerchief. I don't know of any safe, Monsieur Poirot. He had a safe in his London office, but not here. Poirot's smile was faint, but piercing. Vraiment? Yet Sir Reginald was a man of secrets. A safe, it would be discreet, hidden. You will think again, mademoiselle.
Silence built tension. Hastings, familiar with Poirot's methods, braced for the revelation. Poirot stepped to the centre of the room, his cane tapping lightly on the floor. "It is a matter of time, mes amis. The clock in Sir Reginald's cabin stopped at 12:15 a.m., the moment Lady Eleanor cried out. Yet the cry she described, a brief cut-off sound, suggests the murder occurred moments earlier. Why, then, did she wait to scream?" Lady Eleanor's cup clattered against its saucer. "I didn't wait. I heard the cry and ran to his cabin at once." Poirot's eyes locked onto hers. "Précisément, madame, you heard a cry, and yet the clock stopped at the same moment you screamed. This is a contradiction, subtle but significant. The cry, it was not Sir Reginald's, was it? It was another sound, perhaps mistaken in the panic of the moment." The room erupted in murmurs. Clara Pennington's pen paused, her eyes narrowing. "Are you suggesting Lady Eleanor lied about what she heard?" "Not lied, mademoiselle," Poirot said. "Misinterpreted, perhaps, or distracted. The mind, it plays tricks when fear is near." Lady Eleanor's face flushed. "I know what I heard, Monsieur Poirot. It was Reginald's voice, I'm certain." Poirot nodded, but his expression suggested he was not convinced. He turned to Captain Jenkins, who stood by the door. "Captain, you have searched the yacht for this safe?" Jenkins nodded. "Aye, sir. No safe in the cabins or common areas. If there's one, it's well hidden." "Bon. Then we shall look again with method, and we shall examine the deck once more, where our young Tom saw a figure in the dark." The mention of Tom drew a sharp glance from Victor Crane. "That boy's story is flimsy. A shadow in the dark? It could have been anyone, or no one." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Yet shadows, Monsieur Crane, they have substance when viewed in the right light. We shall see." The afternoon was spent in a meticulous search of the yacht. Poirot, with Hastings and Jenkins in tow, examined every cabin, cupboard, and panel. The guests, confined to the saloon, grew increasingly agitated, their whispers audible through the closed door. Hastings noted Clara Pennington's keen interest in the proceedings, a notebook never far from her hand. Reverend Blake, meanwhile, seemed to withdraw further, his prayers growing louder. In the crew's quarters, Poirot paused by Tom's locker, where the bloodied gloves had been found. "These gloves," he said, "they are too large for the boy, and the blood, it is dry yet not old. Planted, yes, but by whom, and why?" Hastings frowned. "To frame Tom, obviously. But why him? He's just a cabin boy." "Précisément, mon ami. He is insignificant, and thus a perfect scapegoat. The killer wishes us to chase this herring, but Poirot, he swims against the current." Panel behind a stack of crates. Inside was a small locked box, its surface engraved with the same initials, R.H. The key from Sir Reginald's desk fit perfectly, and Poirot opened it with a soft click. Inside were documents, letters, contracts, and a single photograph of a young woman, her face unfamiliar. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, studying the photograph. "This is no ordinary box. These papers, they are the heart of the matter." Hastings peered over his shoulder. "Who is she, Poirot?"
And these letters, what do they say? Poirot's eyes gleamed. They speak of debts, of promises broken, of a past that Sir Reginald wished to keep hidden. And this woman, she is a key, perhaps not to a lock, but to a motive. As evening fell, Poirot gathered the guests once more, the box tucked under his arm. "Mes amis," he said, "we have found something. A box hidden, containing secrets. And secrets, they are dangerous. Tomorrow, we will learn whose secrets they are." The guests exchanged uneasy glances, and Hastings knew that Poirot's net was tightening. The ledger, the key, the box, the cry. Each clue was a thread, and Poirot was weaving them into a pattern that would soon reveal the killer. But for now, the Sapphire Yacht remained a floating prison, its secrets locked as tightly as the box in Poirot's hands. Chapter 7. More Lies Surface. The Sapphire Yacht lay still in the cove, its polished deck reflecting the muted glow of the evening sky. The air was heavy with the scent of salt and the unspoken fears of its passengers. Hercule Poirot, ever the picture of composure in his cream linen suit, stood in the saloon, the locked box from the engine room resting on the table before him. Its contents, letters, contracts, and the photograph of a young woman, had stirred a new wave of tension among the guests, who sat in a semicircle, their faces a study in guarded apprehension. Captain Arthur Hastings, positioned near the door, felt the weight of the moment. Poirot was closing in, and the cracks in the guests' carefully crafted stories were beginning to show. Poirot's green eyes swept over the group. Lady Eleanor Haverford, pale and clutching her teacup. Victor Crane, his jaw tight with barely concealed irritation. Clara Pennington, her notebook open but her pen still. Reverend Thomas Blake, his dour expression etched deeper by the day's events. Dr. Malcolm Fraser, calm but watchful. And Miss Agnes Ward, her grey silk dress as pristine as her composure, though her frayed handkerchief so all could see. The young woman, perhaps in her 20s, had striking features, dark hair, a defiant gaze, and a faint scar above her left eyebrow. "Who is she?" Poirot asked, his tone deceptively soft. "One of you knows her, I think. And her connection to Sir Reginald, it is the key to his murder." A heavy silence followed. Lady Eleanor's cup rattled against its saucer, her eyes fixed on the photograph. I've never seen her," she said, her voice trembling. "Reginald never mentioned anyone like that." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Vraiment, madame? Yet your eyes, they betray you. A flicker of recognition, perhaps." Lady Eleanor flushed. "You're mistaken, Monsieur Poirot. I know nothing of her." Poirot set the photograph down and opened the box, withdrawing a letter. Its paper was creased, the ink faded, but legible. "This letter," he said, "is dated 3 years ago, addressed to Sir Reginald from a woman named Margaret Lisle. It speaks of a debt unpaid, a promise broken. It is impassioned. 'You have ruined me,' she writes. 'You will pay in time.' Interessant, no?" Victor Crane leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Margaret Lisle? Never heard of her. Haverford dealt with dozens of people. This could be anyone." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his gaze locking onto Crane's. But this letter was not among the scattered papers on his desk. It was hidden, locked away. Why? Because it was dangerous. And danger, Monsieur Crane, it breeds motive. Crane's face reddened, but he said nothing. Poirot turned
to Miss Ward. "Mademoiselle, as Sir Reginald's secretary, you handled his correspondence. This letter, it is familiar to you?" Miss Ward's fingers stilled on her handkerchief. I may have seen it. Years ago, Sir Reginald received many letters, some threatening. He dismissed them as the complaints of disgruntled investors. Dismissed them? Poirot's tone was sharp. Yet he kept this one locked away. You did not find this unusual? Her eyes dropped. He was private about certain matters. I didn't pry. Poirot's smile was thin. A secretary who does not pry is a rare creature, mademoiselle, but we shall return to that. He moved to the contracts, a stack of documents detailing shares in Haverford Lines. One bore a signature, Victor Crane's, alongside a clause that transferred a significant from Clara Pennington, whose lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. She leaned forward. "Monsieur Poirot, you're building quite a story. This Margaret Lyle, she sounds like a character from one of my novels. A wronged woman, a vengeful spirit. Is she aboard this yacht?" Poirot's gaze was piercing. "A clever question, mademoiselle. But the characters in this drama, they are all here, in this room, and one of them is a murderer." A murmur of unease rippled through the group. Reverend Blake spoke, his voice low and resonant. "The sins of the past come to roost. Sir Reginald was a man of greed, and greed begets vengeance." Poirot turned to him. "You speak of sin, Reverend, as if you knew Sir Reginald's. What sins did you witness?" Blake's eyes narrowed. "I knew him in London, years ago. His wealth was built on the ruin of others, small investors, families, even charities. I warned him to repent, but he laughed." "Intéressant," Poirot said. "And this warning, it was before or after you joined this cruise?" Blake hesitated. "Before. I came to observe him, to see if he had changed." "Observe?" Poirot's tone was sharp. "Or judge? Your prayers, Reverend, they are fervent, but your presence here, it is no coincidence." Blake's lips tightened, but he said no more. Poirot's attention shifted to Dr. Fraser, who had remained silent, his hands folded calmly. "Doctor, you treated Sir Reginald. Did he ever speak of Margaret Lyle or of threats to his life?" Fraser shook his head. "He mentioned no names. He was healthy, but preoccupied. He consulted me about insomnia recently, said business kept him awake." "Business," Poirot repeated. "Or guilt. The photograph, Doctor. Does it stir no memory?" Fraser's composure held, but his fingers twitched. "No, Monsieur Poirot. I don't know her." Poirot closed his notebook with a snap. "Bon. We have learned much, yet not enough. The lies they surface, but the truth, it lies deeper. Tomorrow we will dig further." As the guests dispersed, Hastings followed Poirot to the deck, where the detective stood by the rail, the photograph in his hand. "Poirot," Hastings said, "this Margaret Lyle, she's the key, isn't she? But how do we find her?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the twilight. "We do not find her, mon ami. She is already here, in the shadows of their stories. The letter, the photograph, the contract, they point to a past that someone wishes to..."
The table. Hastings watched as he cross-referenced the letter with the ledger, noting dates and sums. One contract mentioned a payment to M.L., initials that matched Margaret Lyle. Another, signed by Crane, hinted at a dispute over shares, with Sir Reginald retaining control. "Money and betrayal," Poirot murmured. "They are old companions. But this photograph, it is personal. A woman wronged, a promise broken. We must learn her story." As night fell, Poirot locked the box and pocketed the key. Tomorrow, Hastings, we will press harder. The lies, they are cracking, and the truth, it will not stay hidden. The sapphire yacht rocked gently, its isolation a mirror of the secrets it held. Hastings felt a chill, knowing that Poirot's net was tightening, and soon the killer's lies would unravel completely. The sapphire yacht lay cloaked in the velvet darkness of the night, its lanterns casting a faint glow across the deck as the sea whispered against its hull. The cove, serene under a canopy of stars, belied the storm of emotions brewing within the vessel's opulent confines. Hercule Poirot, his cream suit faintly luminescent in the moonlight, stood by the rail, his keen eyes fixed on the horizon, as if it held the answers to the mystery of Sir Reginald Haverford's murder. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at his side, felt the weight of the past days pressing down, the bloody dagger, the cryptic note, the hidden box, and now the photograph of Margaret Lyle, a woman whose shadow loomed over the crime. Inside the saloon, the guests had been dismissed after another grueling round of questioning, their alibis fraying under Poirot's relentless probing. The discovery of the box, with its letters and contracts, had shifted the investigation, revealing a web of financial deceit and personal betrayal. Yet, it was the photograph of Margaret Lyle, her defiant gaze and faint scar, that had stirred something deeper, a crack in the polished facade of the group. Hastings sensed that tonight, something would break. Poirot turned from the rail, his mustache twitching with purpose. "Mon ami," he said, his voice low, "the heart of this mystery is not only in the clues, the dagger, the key, the ledger, but in the emotions they conceal. Tonight, we will press, and someone will crack. The truth, it cannot hide when the heart speaks." Hastings nodded, though his stomach churned. "You think one of them will confess?" "Not confess, Hastings. Reveal. The guilty, they guard their secrets, but the innocent, they feel the weight of silence. We shall see who breaks first." They returned to the saloon, where Poirot had requested a private meeting with Lady Eleanor Haverford. She entered, her auburn hair loosely pinned, her silk dressing gown clinging to her trembling frame. The strain of the past days had etched lines around her eyes, and her hands clutched a lace handkerchief, a fragile shield.
Against Poirot's scrutiny. "Madame," Poirot began, seating himself opposite her, "you have been most cooperative, but there is something you withhold. The photograph of Margaret Lyle, it stirred you. You know her, n'est-ce pas?" Lady Eleanor's lips parted, her breath catching. "I told you, Monsieur Poirot, I don't know her. Why do you insist?" Poirot's eyes were gentle but unyielding. "Because, madame, your eyes betrayed you when you saw her face. A flicker of fear, of recognition. You will tell Hercule Poirot the truth, for the truth, it will free you." Her hands trembled, the handkerchief slipping to the floor. I can't," she whispered. "It's too much." Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft as velvet. "Madame, a man is dead, your husband." The word traitor was pinned to his body. The letter from Margaret Lyle speaks of ruin, of betrayal. If you know something, you must speak, for your sake and for justice. Tears welled in Lady Eleanor's eyes, and she covered her face with her hands. "Oh God," she sobbed, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to believe it, but I knew something was wrong. Reginald, he changed these past months, secretive, distant. He spoke of a mistake, something from years ago. He said it could ruin us." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "A mistake, madame? What was it?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He wouldn't say, only that it was a debt he couldn't pay, not with money. I thought it was another woman, but he swore it wasn't. Then I saw that photograph in his desk, months ago before this trip. I asked him who she was, and he shouted at me, told me to never speak of it." Hastings, standing by the door, felt a pang of sympathy. Lady Eleanor's grief was raw, her composure shattered. Poirot, however, remained focused, his pen poised over his notebook. "This photograph, you saw it in London. Where?" "In his study," she said, her voice barely audible. "Hidden in a drawer.
I wasn't prying. I was looking for a letter. But when I saw it, he was furious. He said it was a reminder of a debt he owed, and that I must forget it. Poirot nodded, making a note. And this debt, it was connected to Margaret Lisle. I don't know her name, Lady Eleanor said, her voice rising. But that face, it's her, isn't it? The woman in the photograph. I thought she was someone he loved once, but now with the murder, I'm afraid. Afraid of what, madame? Poirot pressed. Her eyes met his, wide with terror. That she's...
Do you think she's right? Is Margaret Lisle aboard? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, mon ami? Or perhaps Margaret Lisle is a ghost, a shadow cast by the past. But Lady Eleanor, she has given us a piece of the puzzle. The photograph was known to her, hidden by Sir Reginald. This is no coincidence. The night wore on, and Poirot summoned the other guests one by one, each interview a delicate dance of questions and evasions. Victor Crane, when shown the photograph, denied knowing Margaret Lisle, but his eyes lingered on the scar, and his fingers twitched nervously. Haverford had enemies, he muttered. This woman could be one of them, but I don't know her. Clara Pennington, ever observant, studied the photograph with a writer's curiosity. She's striking, she said. That scar, it's distinctive. If she's connected to Haverford, it's a story worth telling. But I've never seen her. Reverend Blake's reaction was more visceral. His face paled, and he crossed himself. A face from the past, he murmured. Sir Reginald's sins have followed him. Poirot's eyes narrowed. You know her, Reverend? Not personally, Blake said quickly. But I heard of a woman wronged by Haverford years ago. A charity case, ruined by his greed. I don't know her name. Dr. Malcolm Fraser, when shown the photograph, maintained his calm. No, Monsieur Poirot, I don't recognize her. But scars like that, they're memorable. If she was a patient, I'd recall. Miss Agnes Ward, the last to be questioned, studied the photograph with a strange intensity. I've seen her face, she admitted, her voice low. In a letter, years ago, tucked among Sir Reginald's papers. He said she was a nobody, a nuisance. I didn't think to ask more. Poirot's gaze was piercing. A nobody, mademoiselle? Yet her photograph was locked away, her letter kept secret? You did not find this curious? Miss Ward's composure cracked, her voice trembling. I should have asked. But Sir Reginald was my employer. I did my job. As she left, Poirot turned to Hastings. They all know something, mon ami, but they guard it like a treasure. Lady Eleanor's fear, Miss Ward's hesitation, Blake's cryptic warnings, these are cracks in the wall, and through these cracks the truth begins to seep. Hastings frowned. But the photograph, Poirot. If Margaret Lisle is the key, where is she? None of them admit to knowing her well. Poirot's eyes gleamed. She is here, Hastings, in their silences, in their fears. The photograph, it is not just a clue. It is a mirror, reflecting their guilt. Tomorrow we will hold it up and see who flinches. The sapphire yacht rocked gently, its isolation a crucible for secrets. Hastings felt the tension building, knowing that Poirot... Chapter 9. The Trap. The sapphire yacht gleamed under the midday sun, its polished deck a stark contrast to the storm of suspicion brewing within its confines. The cove, with its tranquil waters and distant cliffs, seemed a world apart from the tension aboard, where Hercule Poirot was tightening the noose around a murderer. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the saloon's window, watching the sea shimmer, his mind racing with the revelations of the past days, the bloodied dagger, the note marked traitor, the hidden box, and the photograph of Margaret Lisle, whose ghostly presence seemed to haunt every guest. Poirot, immaculate in his cream suit, stood at the center of the saloon, his notebook closed, his cane resting lightly against the table. The guests were gathered once more, their faces a mosaic of anxiety and defiance. Lady Eleanor Haverford, her auburn hair pinned tightly, sat with her hands clasped, her eyes darting nervously.
Victor Crane, the stockbroker, slouched in his chair, his earlier bravado replaced by a sullen wariness. Clara Pennington, the novelist, clutched her notebook, her sharp gaze fixed on Poirot as if studying a character in one of her stories. Reverend Thomas Blake's dour expression was etched with disapproval, his fingers tracing the edge of his clerical collar. Dr. Malcolm Fraser maintained his professional calm, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Miss Agnes Ward, Sir Reginald's secretary, was a picture of composure, but her frayed handkerchief told a different story. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was a velvet blade, cutting through the heavy silence. Mesdames et messieurs, we are at a moment most critical. A man lies dead, murdered by one among us. The clues, the dagger, the note, the key, the photograph, they form a pattern, but it is the human heart that reveals the truth. Today, Hercule Poirot sets a trap, and the guilty, they will betray themselves. A murmur of unease rippled through the room. Victor Crane leaned forward, his voice sharp. A trap? This is absurd, Poirot. You've been hounding us for days, and now you're playing games? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Not a game, Monsieur Crane. A necessity. The killer is clever, planting gloves to mislead, hiding secrets in locked boxes. But cleverness, it falters under pressure, and pressure I shall apply. He placed the photograph of Margaret Lyle on the table, its edges worn, but the woman's face clear. Dark hair, defiant eyes, a faint scar above her eyebrow. This woman, Poirot said, is the key to Sir Reginald's death. Her letter speaks of ruin, of betrayal. Her photograph, hidden away, suggests a secret too dangerous to share. One of you knows her.
Madame, yet your fear. Idly, Poirot turned to Clara Pennington. Mademoiselle Pennington, you are a writer, a weaver of tales. You observed Sir Reginald's watch at dinner, noting its gold chain, its frequent checking. Did you also observe a woman like this in his life? Clara's pen paused, her eyes narrowing. I write fiction, Monsieur Poirot, not fact. I saw no such woman aboard. But Sir Reginald's distractions were suggestive. He was hiding something, perhaps someone. Poirot nodded, moving to Reverend Blake. Reverend, you spoke of Sir Reginald's sins, of the woman wronged. Was this Margaret Lyle? Blake's lips tightened. I knew of a woman from his past, ruined by his greed. Her name was not mentioned, but her pain was real. I came to this yacht to see if he had repented. Poirot's gaze shifted to Dr. Fraser. Doctor, you treated Sir Reginald. Did he ever mention a woman, a debt, a regret? Fraser's calm wavered, his fingers twitching. He spoke of stress, not specifics, no names, no faces. Finally, Poirot faced Miss Ward. Mademoiselle, you saw this photograph in Sir Reginald's papers. You knew of his secrets. Was Margaret Lyle among them? Miss Ward's composure faltered, her voice low. I saw her face once in a letter. Sir Reginald called her a nuisance, nothing more. I didn't ask. Poirot's smile was faint but sharp. You did not ask, yet you remembered. The memory, it is selective, n'est-ce pas? He stepped back, addressing the group. The trap, mes amis, is this. I know one of you is linked to Margaret Lyle. The letter, the photograph, the word traitor, they point to a betrayal, a debt unpaid. I will give you until tonight to come forward. Speak to me privately. Confess what you know, and the truth may be kinder to you. Refuse, and the net of Hercule Poirot will close. The room erupted in protests. Victor Crane stood, his face flushed. This is blackmail. I won't be bullied into confessing to something I didn't do. Lady Eleanor's voice trembled. I've told you everything. I don't know her. Clara Pennington's eyes gleamed. A bold move, Monsieur Poirot. But what if we're all innocent of this murder? Poirot's gaze was unyielding. Innocent of murder, perhaps. But innocent of secrets? No. You will come to me,
or I will come to you." As the guests dispersed, their voices a cacophony of indignation, Hastings followed Poirot to the deck. "You're pushing them hard, Poirot," he said, his voice low. "What if they all hold out?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the sunlight. "They will not, mon ami. The guilty—"
Tom's locker, the ledger's mysterious £50,000 payment, all pointed to a motive rooted in betrayal. But it was the photograph and Lady Eleanor's emotional collapse that had shifted the investigation. Margaret Lyle was no longer a ghost. She was a presence, felt in every nervous glance. As evening approached, Poirot gathered the guests in the saloon once more, his demeanor calm but expectant. "The hour is near," he said. "I have given you time to reflect. Now I ask again, who is Margaret Lyle to you?" Silence hung heavy, broken only by the creak of the yacht and the distant lap of waves. Then Miss Agnes Ward stood, her face pale, her handkerchief a tattered remnant in her hands. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling, "I must speak. I know who she is." The room froze, every eye on her. Hastings's heart raced. Here was the crack Poirot had predicted. Poirot leaned forward, his voice soft but commanding. "Speak, mademoiselle. The truth, it is your only refuge." Miss Ward's eyes filled with tears. "Margaret Lyle. She was my sister. Her real name was Margaret Ward. Sir Reginald ruined her years ago, with a promise of marriage, then cast her aside when she bore his child. She wrote that letter threatening him. I came here, to this yacht, to confront him, to demand justice." A gasp rippled through the room. Lady Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. Victor Crane's face hardened, while Clara Pennington's pen scratched furiously. Reverend Blake's eyes narrowed, and Dr. Fraser's calm cracked, his fingers clenching. Poirot's gaze was unwavering. "And this confrontation, mademoiselle, it led to murder?" "No," Miss Ward cried, her voice breaking. "I wanted answers, not his death. I saw him that night before midnight. I begged him to acknowledge her, to help her. He laughed, said she was nothing. I left him alive, I swear." Poirot's smile was faint. "Merci, mademoiselle. Your truth, it is a step toward justice, but the whole truth, it is not yet ours." As Miss Ward collapsed into her chair, sobbing, Hastings knew the trap had worked. The net was tightening, and the killer's shadow was growing clearer. The Sapphire Yacht remained a prison of secrets, but one had been unlocked, and more would follow. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The saloon of the Sapphire Yacht was a cauldron of tension, its opulent decor, polished mahogany, crystal chandelier, velvet drapes, mocked by the raw emotions of its occupants. The evening light filtered through the portholes, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror the secrets unraveling aboard. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his cream suit immaculate, his moustache a perfect arc of waxed precision. His green eyes, sharp as a hawk's, swept over the gathered guests, each a piece in the intricate puzzle of Sir Reginald Haverford's murder. Captain Arthur Hastings, by the door, felt his pulse quicken. Miss Agnes Ward's confession, Margaret Lyle was her sister Margaret Ward, ruined by Sir Reginald, had cracked the facade, and now Poirot was poised to unveil the truth. The guests sat in a tense semicircle. Lady Eleanor Haverford, her face pale, her hands gripping a lace handkerchief. Victor Crane, his jaw tight, his eyes darting with unease. Clara Pennington, her notebook open but her pen still, her gaze alight with anticipation. Reverend Thomas Blake, his dour expression now tinged with apprehension. Dr. Malcolm Fraser, his professional calm fraying at the edges. And Miss Agnes Ward, her composure shattered, her eyes red from tears. Captain Jenkins stood by, his weathered face grim, a silent sentinel ensuring no one fled. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was a melodic blend of authority and calm. "Mesdames et messieurs, we have reached the denouement. A man is dead, struck down by a dagger in his own cabin. A note marked traitor, a hidden box, a photograph, a ledger. These clues have led us through a labyrinth of lies. But now, Hercule Poirot will lay bare the truth, step by step, using the little grey cells. The murderer is in this room, and they will be unmasked." A collective intake of breath followed. Victor Crane shifted, his voice sharp. "Get on with it, Poirot.
You've kept us here long enough with your theatrics. Poirot's smile was faint but unyielding. Theatrics, Monsieur Crane? No, method. The truth requires precision, like a watchmaker assembling a timepiece. Let us begin. He placed the photograph of Margaret Ward, known as Margaret Lyle, on the table, her defiant gaze a silent accusation. This woman, he said, was the heart of the matter. Margaret Ward, ruined by Sir Reginald Haverford, who promised her marriage, fathered her child, then cast her aside. A letter, found in the hidden box, spoke of vengeance. Her sister, Miss Agnes Ward, came aboard this yacht to confront him. But was she the killer? Miss Ward's sob broke the silence. I didn't kill him. I swear it. Poirot raised a hand. Calm, mademoiselle. I believe you. Your anger was real, but your hands are clean. The killer, they used your pain as a veil. He turned to the diagram of the yacht, pinned to the wall. Let us reconstruct the night of the murder. Sir Reginald was killed between midnight and 12:15 a.m., when Lady Eleanor cried out. The cabin boy, Tom, saw a figure moving toward his cabin, cloaked in darkness. Bloodied gloves were found in Tom's locker, a clumsy attempt to frame him. But the clues, the dagger, the note, the key, tell a different story. Poirot lifted the dagger, its ivory handle carved with a serpent and rose. This weapon, it is not common. It is personal, a symbol. It was chosen to send a message.
The contracts in the box, signed by Monsieur Crane, hinted at a dispute over shares in Haverford Lines. The photograph and letter pointed to Margaret Ward, a woman wronged. But how do they connect? Poirot's gaze fell on Lady Eleanor. Madame, you heard a cry, you said, and ran to your husband's cabin. Yet the clock stopped at 12:15, the moment of your scream. This is a contradiction. The cry was not Sir Reginald's. It was staged, perhaps to draw you out. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened. Staged? But I heard it. Oui, madame, you heard a sound, but it was not your husband. It was a distraction created by the killer to establish the time of death. Poirot turned to Victor Crane. Monsieur Crane, your alibi is weak. You were seen at 11:30 smoking on deck, but after, you claim to have been in your cabin, yet no one saw you. And your signature, it is on a contract that funneled profits to an unnamed party, perhaps Margaret Ward or someone acting in her name. Crane's face reddened. I told you, it was business. Haverford was squeezing me out. I had no reason to kill him. Vraiment? Poirot's eyes narrowed. Or did you fear exposure? Sir Reginald, he knew of your dealings, perhaps threatened to reveal them. Poirot moved to Clara Pennington. Mademoiselle, you are observant, yet you claim to have seen nothing. Your cabin is near Sir Reginald's, yet you heard no cry until Lady Eleanor's scream. Curious for a writer so attuned to detail. Clara's lips curved. I write fiction, Monsieur Poirot. I don't live it. Perhaps, Poirot said, but your fiction, it draws from life. You knew of Margaret Ward, did you not? A story too good to ignore. Clara's smile faltered, but she said nothing. Poirot turned to Reverend Blake. Reverend, you spoke of Sir Reginald's sins, of a woman wronged. You knew Margaret Ward's story, yet you hid it. Why? Blake's voice was low. I sought to save his soul, not condemn it. Her ruin was his shame, but I did not kill him. Poirot nodded, then faced Dr. Fraser. Doctor, you were quick to examine the body, yet you saw no clues. You're calm. It is remarkable. Did Sir Reginald confide in you about Margaret Ward? Fraser's fingers twitched. He mentioned no names, only stress, insomnia. Finally, Poirot turned to Miss Ward. Mademoiselle, you admitted Margaret was your sister. You confronted Sir Reginald, but you did not kill him. Yet you knew of the box, the key, the photograph. Why did you not speak sooner? Miss Ward's voice trembled. I was afraid. Afraid of what it meant. I thought he'd killed her years ago. When I saw the fact...
They struck. He paused, letting the silence build. The killer is Dr. Malcolm Fraser.
A gasp swept the room. Fraser's face paled, his hands clenching. "This is absurd! I had no motive!" Poirot's voice was calm but relentless. "You had every motive, Doctor. Margaret Ward was your patient, years ago when she bore Sir Reginald's child. You helped her, kept her secret, but you loved her. When Sir Reginald refused to pay her, threatened to expose her, you acted. The dagger, it was yours, a gift from a patient perhaps, kept in your cabin. The note, traitor, was your accusation. The gloves, planted in Tom's locker, were yours, stained with blood to mislead. And the cry? You mimicked it, drawing Lady Eleanor to establish the time." Fraser stood, his voice shaking. "You have no proof." Poirot held up a letter from the box. "This, Doctor, is your handwriting. A note to Margaret, promising to protect her. The photograph. It was in your possession before Sir Reginald took it. You boarded this yacht to confront him, and when he laughed at your demands, you killed him." Fraser's composure collapsed, his face crumpling. "He destroyed her," he cried. "She died in poverty, alone, because of him. I couldn't let him live." The room was silent. The confession a thunderclap. Poirot nodded. "Merci, Doctor. The truth, it is revealed." Hastings stared, stunned, as Jenkins moved to restrain Fraser. The sapphire yacht had yielded its secret, and Poirot's little gray cells had triumphed once more. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The sapphire yacht lay anchored in the quiet cove, its sleek form bathed in the soft glow of dawn. The sea was a mirror of calm, reflecting the fading stars and the first blush of morning light. Inside the saloon, the air was heavy with the aftermath of Dr. Malcolm Fraser's confession, a thunderclap that had shattered the tension aboard. Hercule Poirot, his cream suit as pristine as ever, stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, his mustache a perfect curve of waxed precision. Captain Arthur Hastings, seated at the table, felt a strange mix of relief and melancholy. The puzzle was solved, the murderer unmasked, yet the weight of the tragedy lingered. The guests, released from the confines of Poirot's interrogations, had retreated to their cabins, save for Miss Agnes Ward, who sat alone in a corner, her face pale and her eyes distant. Dr. Fraser had been confined to his cabin under Captain Jenkins' watch, awaiting the arrival of the police, who had been radioed at first light. The yacht, once a floating palace of luxury, now felt like a stage where a grim drama had played out, its actors spent. Poirot turned from the window, his green eyes thoughtful.
"It's a grim business, Poirot. Fraser seemed so composed. I never would have suspected him." Poirot's smile was faint, tinged with sadness. "Zahar Hastings, it is a labyrinth. Dr. Fraser loved Margaret Ward, and her ruin by Sir Reginald was a wound that never healed. His calm, it was the mask of a man who had planned his vengeance with care. But vengeance, it is a fire that consumes the one who wields it." Hastings leaned back, his mind replaying the events of the past days, the bloodied dagger, the note marked traitor, the hidden box, the photograph of Margaret Ward. "You saw it all along, didn't you? The gloves in Tom's locker, the cry Lady Eleanor heard, how did you know they pointed to Fraser?" Poirot tapped his temple lightly. "The little grey cells, mon ami. They see what the eyes miss. The gloves, they were too large for the boy, and the blood, it was too conveniently placed. The cry, it was not Sir Reginald's. Fraser mimicked it to draw Lady Eleanor to fix the time of death. And the photograph, it was the key. Fraser's reaction, it was too controlled, too perfect. The man who feels nothing, he hides everything." Hastings frowned. "But Miss Ward's confession, her sister, Margaret, that nearly threw me off." "Oui," Poirot said, pacing slowly. "Miss Ward's truth was a thread, but not the whole cloth. She sought justice for her sister, but she lacked the coldness to kill. Fraser, he had both motive and method."
The letter in his handwriting found in the box, it was the final piece. He wrote to Margaret, promising to protect her, but when Sir Reginald refused to pay, his promise turned to murder. Hastings shook his head. And the others? Crane, Clara, Blake, they all seemed guilty at times. Poirot's eyes gleamed. They were guilty, Hastings, but not of murder. Crane, he hid his financial disputes with Sir Reginald, fearing exposure. Mademoiselle Pennington, she observed too much, perhaps hoping for a story. Reverend Blake, he judged Sir Reginald's sins, but his hands were clean. And Lady Eleanor, her fear was real, but it was fear of the past, not of guilt. Each had secrets, but only phrases led to blood. The saloon door opened, and Captain Jenkins entered, his weathered face drawn. "Monsieur Poirot, the police launch is approaching. They'll be here within the hour." "Bon," Poirot said. "You will prepare Dr. Fraser for their arrival. He will face justice as he must." Jenkins nodded and left, leaving Poirot and Hastings alone. Hastings looked at his friend, a question lingering. "Poirot, why did Sir Reginald keep that photograph? If he ruined Margaret, why hold on to her image?"
Feared her vengeance. We will never know. Hastings sighed. And Margaret Ward? What happened to her? Fraser said she died in poverty. Oui, Poirot said, his voice low. A tragedy that began this chain of events. Her sister, Miss Ward, will carry that grief, but she will find peace in knowing the truth. They stepped onto the deck, where the morning air was crisp, the sea a canvas of light and shadow. The police launch was visible now, a dark speck in the horizon. Poirot leaned on the rail, his gaze distant. "Justice, Hastings. It is a balance. We right the wrong, but we cannot undo the pain. This is the work of Hercule Poirot, not to heal, but to reveal." Hastings nodded, his respect for his friend deepening. "You did it again, Poirot. You saw through the lies, the red herrings, the shadows. I don't know how you do it." Poirot's smile was modest but proud. "The method, mon ami. Order and method. The little grey cells, they see the pattern where others see chaos. And in this case, the pattern was one of love twisted into vengeance." As the police launch drew closer, Poirot straightened, adjusting his hat. "Come, Hastings. We will meet the authorities, and then we will leave this yacht. The sea, it is beautiful, but it holds too many secrets for my taste." They moved to the gangway, where Miss Ward stood, watching the approaching launch. Her face was calm now, though her eyes were still red. "Monsieur Poirot," she said softly, "thank you. For Margaret, for the truth." Poirot bowed slightly. "Mademoiselle, the truth is my duty. You will carry your sister's memory, but you will carry it with light." As the police boarded, Poirot and Hastings stepped aside, their work done. The Sapphire yacht, once a stage for murder, would soon return to its role as a vessel of luxury. But for now, it was a place of justice. Poirot's little grey cells had triumphed, and as he walked away, his cane tapping a steady rhythm, Hastings knew that the Belgian detective's legend had grown a little brighter. Chapter 12. The Aftermath. The Sapphire yacht lay still in the cove, its polished deck catching the late morning sun as the police launch bobbed alongside, its officers moving with brisk efficiency. The air was crisp, carrying the tang of salt and the faint hum of activity as Dr. Malcolm Fraser, now in handcuffs, was escorted from his cabin to the waiting vessel. Hercule Poirot, his cream suit a beacon of calm amid the flurry, stood by the rail, his green eyes observing the scene with a quiet intensity. Captain Arthur Hastings, at his side, felt a strange mix of satisfaction and unease. The murderer had been unmasked, the truth laid bare, yet the ripples of the crime lingered, like waves spreading across the sea. The guests, released from the saloon's confines, gathered in small knots on the deck, their voices low, their faces marked by the strain of the past days.
Hair catching the breeze, her eyes fixed on the horizon, as if seeking escape from the memory of her husband's death. Victor Crane, his usual swagger subdued, leaned against the rail, muttering to himself. Clara Pennington, ever the observer, scribbled in her notebook, her sharp gaze darting between the police, and her fellow passengers. Reverend Thomas Blake, his clerical collar askew, clasped his hands in silent prayer, while Miss Agnes Ward, her composure partially restored, watched the proceedings with a mix of relief and sorrow. Poirot turned to Hastings, his mustache twitching slightly. "Mon ami," he said, his voice soft but resonant. "The case is closed, the murderer apprehended, yet the heart, it does not so easily find peace. The Sapphire Yacht, it has been a stage for tragedy, and we, its audience, must now reflect." Hastings nodded, his thoughts still tangled in the web of clues and confessions. "It's over, Poirot, but it doesn't feel finished. Fraser's confession, Margaret Ward's ruin, his love for her, it's all so personal. And the others, they're still shaken." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Oui, Hastings. A crime, it is not only a violation of the law, but of the soul. Each of these people, Lady Eleanor, Crane, Mademoiselle Pennington, Blake, Miss Ward, they carry their own burdens. The truth, it frees, but it also wounds." The police officer in charge, Inspector Caldwell, a burly man with a weathered face, approached Poirot, his notebook open. "Monsieur Poirot, we've taken Dr. Fraser's statement. He's admitted to the murder, though he's not saying much beyond what you drew out. We'll need your full account for the report." Poirot inclined his head. "Naturellement, Inspector. You will have it, written with the precision of Hercule Poirot. The dagger, the note, the hidden box, the photograph, all led to Dr. Fraser, a man driven by love and vengeance. The gloves in the cabin boy's locker, they were his attempt to mislead, but the little gray cells, they see through such ruses." Caldwell nodded, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "You've a sharp mind, sir. We'd have been chasing shadows without you. We'll take Fraser to the mainland for trial. The yacht's free to return to Torquay once we've finished our search." "Bon," Poirot said. "And the box, Inspector? You will find it contains documents of interest, contracts, letters, a photograph. They tell the story of Margaret Ward, the woman whose ruin set this tragedy in motion." As Caldwell moved to oversee the search, Hastings glanced at Miss Ward, who stood alone, her gray silk dress catching the light. "Poor woman," he said. "To learn her sister's fate like this, and to see Fraser's downfall, it must be unbearable." Poirot's expression softened. "Oui, mon ami." Miss Ward sought justice for her sister.
They approached Miss Ward, who looked up, her eyes still red but steady. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice low, "I owe you a debt. You found the truth about Margaret. I wish I'd spoken sooner." Poirot bowed slightly. "Mademoiselle, your courage was the key that unlocked the door. You honored your sister's memory. Now you must find peace." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I'll try. But knowing she suffered, and that Fraser, it's hard." Poirot's voice was gentle. "The past, it cannot be changed. But the truth, it gives us strength to face it. You will endure, mademoiselle." As Miss Ward moved away, Hastings turned to Poirot. "What about the others? Lady Eleanor, Crane, the rest, they're all tangled in this somehow." Poirot's gaze swept the deck. "Lady Eleanor, she feared her husband's secrets, but she is innocent of his death. Crane, his greed made him a suspect, but his cowardice kept him from murder. Mademoiselle Pennington, she saw too much, yet said too little, perhaps for her next novel. And Blake, his judgment was moral, not criminal. They are not guilty. Cause the contract?" Inspector Caldwell returned, his expression grim. "We found a diary in Fraser's cabin," he said. "It mentions Margaret Ward, confirms what you said. He planned to confront Haverford, demand payment for her. When Haverford refused, he snapped." Poirot nodded. "The diary, it is the final piece. Fraser's love for Margaret was his motive, his downfall. He is a man of skill, of care, yet passion led him to ruin." As the police launch prepared to depart, Lady Eleanor approached, her face pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot, I don't know how to thank you. Reginald's death, it's a shock, but knowing why, it helps, somehow." Poirot bowed.
Madame, the truth is my duty. Your husband, he made mistakes, but you will carry on. Courage, it is yours. She nodded, her eyes glistening, and turned away. The other guests, too, offered muted thanks or silent nods, their relief tempered by the weight of the ordeal. Clara Pennington, pausing by Poirot, smiled faintly. "You've given me a story, Monsieur Poirot. A tragedy, but a good one." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Write it well, mademoiselle. But remember, the truth is not fiction. It is life." As the police launch pulled away, Fraser's figure a dark silhouette against the sea, the sapphire yacht began its preparations to return to Torquay. Poirot and Hastings stood on the deck. The breeze carried Poirot. He brings light to the darkness, but the darkness, it does not vanish. Hastings nodded, understanding. "You did it, though. You saw through the lies, the red herrings. Fraser never stood a chance." Poirot's smile was modest but proud. "The little grey cells, Hastings. They see the pattern, the truth beneath the surface. And now, we return to the world where other patterns await." As the yacht's engines hummed to life, Poirot adjusted his hat, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. The sapphire yacht would soon be a memory, a chapter closed in the annals of Poirot's triumphs. But for now, as it sailed toward the mainland, it carried the weight of a tragedy resolved, and a detective whose legend grew with every step. The return to Torquay. The sapphire yacht cut through the gentle waves, its engines humming a steady rhythm as it made its way back to the harbor of Torquay. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow across the deck, softening the harsh edges of the past day's ordeal. Hercule Poirot, his cream suit as impeccable as ever, stood at the bow, his Panama hat tilted against the glare, his green eyes scanning the approaching coastline. Captain Arthur Hastings, beside him, felt a quiet relief at the sight of land, though the shadow of Sir Reginald Haverford's murder lingered like a stubborn fog. The police launch had departed hours ago, taking Dr. Malcolm Fraser to face justice on the mainland. The guests, now free to move about the yacht, were subdued, their conversations muted as they grappled with the truth Poirot had unveiled. The saloon, once a stage for tension and suspicion, was now a place of reflection, its opulent decor a stark contrast to the grim drama that had unfolded. Lady Eleanor Haverford sat alone, her auburn hair catching the light as she stared out a porthole, lost in thought. Victor Crane, his bravado diminished, paced the deck, while Clara Pennington scribbled in her notebook, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Reverend Thomas Blake, his dour demeanor softened, murmured prayers, and Miss Agnes Ward, her grief tempered by the truth about her sister, sat quietly, her hands still. Poirot turned to Hastings, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. "Mon ami, the sea, it is beautiful, but it holds too many secrets for Hercule Poirot. The land, it is where order is restored, where the truth finds its place." Hastings nodded, his thoughts still tangled in the case's intricacies, the dagger, the note marked traitor, the hidden box, and the photograph of Margaret Ward. "It's a strange feeling, Poirot. We've solved the murder, but it doesn't erase what happened. Fraser's confession, Miss Ward's pain, it's all so human." "Oui, Hastings," Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant. "A crime, it is not merely a puzzle to be solved. It is a window into the soul, its passions, its murder." Miss Ward, she sought justice for her sister, and found only sorrow. The truth, it liberates, but it also wounds. Hastings glanced at the deck, where the guests moved like ghosts of their former selves. What will happen to them now? Lady Eleanor, Crane, the others, they're all changed by this. Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet wisdom. "They will carry on, mon ami, as people do. Lady Eleanor, she will mourn her husband, but she will find strength. Crane, his greed will lead him to new ventures, though perhaps with more caution. Mademoiselle Pennington, she will write her story, weaving this tragedy into her fiction. Reverend Blake, he will preach of sin and redemption, perhaps with more humility. And Miss Ward, she will honor her sister's memory, finding peace in time. As the yacht drew closer to Torquay, Captain Jenkins approached, his weathered face etched with fatigue.
Monsieur Poirot, we'll dock within the hour. The police have sent word. They'll want statements from everyone, but they're satisfied with Fraser's confession. Your work made their job easy.
Poirot inclined his head. Merci, Captain. Hercule Poirot does not seek ease, but truth. The police, they will do their duty as I have done mine. Jenkins hesitated, then added,
The crew's grateful, sir. That business with the gloves in Tom's locker, it could have gone badly for him without you.
Poirot's smile was modest. The boy was innocent, Captain. The gloves, they were a clumsy ruse, but the little grey cells, they see through such deceptions. As Jenkins returned to his duties, Hastings leaned against the rail, watching the coastline grow sharper. You knew it was Fraser from the start, didn't you? Or at least, you suspected him early on. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Not from the start, mon ami. But the clues, they pointed to him. The dagger, it was too personal for a stranger. The note, traitor, spoke of betrayal, fell deeply. The photograph, it was the link. Fraser's handwriting in the letter, his calm too perfect. The little grey cells, they assemble the pattern, and the pattern, it was his. Hastings shook his head, marvelling. And the cry Lady Eleanor heard, how did you know it was staged? Poirot tapped his cane lightly. The clock, Hastings. It stopped at 12:15, the moment of her scream. Yet the cry she described, it was brief, cut off. A man stabbed through the heart does not cry out so clearly. Fraser, he mimicked the sound, perhaps by dropping a heavy object to draw her out and fix the time. It was
Her voice low.
I don't know how to thank you. Reginald's death, it's a wound, but knowing the truth, it helps me face it.
Poirot bowed slightly.
Madame, the truth is my duty. Your husband's mistakes, they were many, but you are free to build anew. Courage, it is yours. She nodded, a tear glistening, and moved away. Clara Pennington paused next, a notebook tucked under her arm. You're a remarkable man, Monsieur Poirot. This case, it's a story I'll never forget. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Write it with care, mademoiselle. The truth, it is more powerful than fiction. As the yacht docked, the guests began to disembark, their steps heavy with the weight of the past days. Miss Ward lingered, her grey eyes meeting Poirot's. Monsieur Poirot, I'll never forget what you did for Margaret. Her story, it's not the ending I wanted, but it's the truth. Poirot's voice was gentle. Mademoiselle, the truth is a light in the darkness. You will carry it for your sister, and it will guide you. As she walked away, Hastings turned to Poirot. What now, old chap? Back to London? A hot meal? A quiet evening? Poirot's eyes gleamed with mischief. Oui, Hastings, but not too quiet. The world, it is full of puzzles, and Hercule Poirot, he is never idle. A tisane, perhaps, and then, who knows what mystery awaits. The gangway was lowered, and Poirot stepped onto the quay, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. Hastings followed, a smile tugging at his lips. The sapphire yacht was behind them, its secrets laid bare, but the world beyond was vast, and Poirot's little grey cells were ready for the next challenge. As the sun dipped towards the horizon, casting a golden path across the sea, Hastings knew that wherever Poirot went, truth would follow. Chapter 14. Shadows of the Past. The sapphire yacht rested at the Torquay quay, its gleaming hull a silent witness to the drama that had unfolded within its opulent confines. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the harbour, where fishing boats bobbed
and gulls wheeled overhead, their cries mingling with the chatter of dock workers. Hercule Poirot, his cream suit untouched by the chaos of the past days, stood on the quay, his Panama hat tilted against the glare, his green eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction. Captain Arthur Hastings, at his side, felt the weight of the case lifting, though the echoes of Sir Reginald Haverford's murder lingered like a faint mist over the sea. The police had completed their work, taking Dr. Malcolm Fraser to the mainland for trial, along with the evidence, the dagger, the note marked traitor, the hidden box, and the photograph of Margaret Ward. The guests, now free to leave, were dispersing, their faces a mix of relief.
His swagger partially restored, was already discussing business with a dockside acquaintance, though his glances betrayed a wariness. Clara Pennington, her notebook tucked away, boarded a taxi, her sharp eyes still scanning the scene, as if gathering material for her next novel. Reverend Thomas Blake, his dour expression softened by the resolution, murmured a blessing before departing for the train station. Miss Agnes Ward, her grey silk dress a stark contrast to her pale face, lingered on the quay, her eyes fixed on the yacht, as if reluctant to leave its secrets behind. Poirot turned to Hastings, his moustache twitching with a faint smile. Mon ami, the curtain has fallen on this tragedy, yet the stage it is never truly empty. The shadows of the past, they linger, do they not? Hastings nodded, his thoughts drifting to the photograph of Margaret Ward, her defiant gaze a haunting reminder of the pain that had driven Fraser to murder. It's a grim tale, Poirot. Margaret's ruin, Fraser's vengeance, Miss Ward's grief, it's all so interconnected, like a web spun years ago. Oui, Hastings, Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant. A crime. It is not an isolated act. It is a thread in the tapestry of lives, woven from choices, regrets, and passions. Sir Reginald's greed set this in motion, and the consequences, they ripple outward. They walked slowly along the quay, the bustle of Torquay a comforting return to normalcy. Hastings glanced at Poirot, a question forming. Do you think Fraser will speak more at his trial? He was so reserved, even after confessing. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Dr. Fraser, he is a man of control, even in defeat. His confession, it was the breaking of a dam. But the flood, it has receded. He will say what is needed, but his heart, it is locked away with Margaret's memory. As they passed a cafe, its tables spilling onto the pavement, Miss Ward approached, her steps hesitant. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady despite the redness in her eyes. I wanted to speak before I leave. I found something among my things, something I didn't realize I had. She drew a small folded letter from her handbag, its edges worn. It's from Margaret, written years ago, before she died. I found it in an old book I brought aboard. I think you should see it. Poirot took the letter with gloved hands, his expression unreadable. He unfolded it carefully, his eyes scanning the delicate handwriting. Hastings peered over his shoulder, catching fragments. I cannot forgive him, but I cannot hate him. The child, she is my light.
She was ill. I never knew she felt that way. I thought she hated Sir Reginald completely. Poirot folded the letter and returned it to her. She loved mademoiselle, even in her pain. This letter, it is your sister's gift to you. Keep it close and let it guide you to peace. Miss Ward nodded, clutching the letter to her chest. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, for everything. As she walked away, Hastings turned to Poirot. That letter, it changes nothing, yet it changes everything. It makes Margaret real, not just a shadow. Précisément, mon ami, Poirot said. The truth, it is not only facts, but feelings. Margaret Ward's story, it is the heart of this case, and her sister, she will carry it forward.
They continued along the quay, the yacht now a distant silhouette against the harbour. Hastings glanced at Poirot, a thought nagging at him. "What about the others, Poirot? Lady Eleanor? Crane? Clara? Will they be all right?" Poirot's smile was faint, but wise. "Lady Eleanor? She will rebuild, though her heart is heavy. Crane? His ambition will drive him, but he will tread more carefully. Mademoiselle Pennington? She will turn this tragedy into art, and perhaps find truth in her fiction. They are touched by this, but they are not broken." As they reached the end of the quay, a car waited to take them to the train station. Poirot paused, adjusting his hat. "The Sapphire Yacht. It is a chapter closed, Hastings. But the book of life? It is never finished. There are always more pages, more puzzles." Hastings smiled, his spirits lifting. "And you'll be there to solve them, I suppose?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Naturellement. Hercule Poirot, he does not rest while there is injustice. But first, a tisane, and perhaps a quiet evening, though not too quiet." They climbed into the car, the harbour fading behind them. The Sapphire Yacht stood as a monument to a tragedy resolved, its secrets laid bare by Poirot's little grey cells. As the car wound through the streets of Torquay, Hastings felt a quiet pride in his friend's brilliance and a certainty that, wherever they went next, truth would follow. Chapter 15. The Final Departure. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Torquay harbour in hues of amber and violet as the Sapphire Yacht stood moored at the quay, its once glorious presence now subdued by the shadow of murder. Hercule Poirot, his cream suit pristine and his Panama hat tilted just so, stood at the edge of the quay, his cane resting lightly in his hand. His green eyes, prison of secrets. Yet the echoes of the tragedy lingered. The guests had all departed, their figures vanishing into the evening. Lady Eleanor Haverford had left for London, her face composed, but her eyes haunted by loss. Victor Crane, his confidence shaken but not broken, had caught a train to meet business associates, already spinning new schemes. Clara Pennington, her notebook brimming with notes for a novel, had boarded a taxi with a cryptic smile, as if the case had gifted her a story she could not wait to write. Reverend Thomas Blake, his dour demeanour softened by the resolution, had returned to his parish, his prayers perhaps carrying a new weight. Miss Agnes Ward, clutching her sister's letter, had taken a quiet departure, her steps slow but resolute, as if carrying Margaret's memory into a future she could now face. Poirot turned to Hastings, his moustache twitching with a faint, reflective smile. "Mon ami, the Sapphire Yacht is behind us, its secrets laid bare. Yet the heart does not so easily let go of such a tale. The truth, it is a beacon, but it casts a long shadow." Hastings nodded, his gaze drifting to the yacht, its lanterns glowing softly in the dusk. "It's a strange feeling, Poirot. We've solved the murder, brought Fraser to justice, but it's not just about the crime, is it? It's about Margaret Ward, Miss Ward, all of them, lives tangled in Sir Reginald's choices." "Précisément," Poirot said, his voice soft but resonant. "A crime, it is not merely a puzzle of clues, the dagger, the note, the hidden box, the photograph. It is a story of human passions, of love and betrayal, of grief and vengeance. Dr. Fraser, he killed for love, but love, it is a dangerous master. Miss Ward, she sought justice and found only the pain of her sister's loss. The little grey cells, they solve the mystery, but the heart, it feels its weight." Hastings glanced at his friend, a question forming. "Do you ever feel it, Poirot? The weight of it all? You uncover these truths, but they're so heavy." Poirot's eyes gleamed with a rare vulnerability. "Oui, Hastings. Hercule Poirot, he is not immune to the human condition. But my duty, it is to bring order to chaos, to shine light where there is darkness. The weight, it is there, but it is balanced by the satisfaction of justice."
They walked slowly toward the train station, the lights of Torquay twinkling in the growing darkness. The bustle of the harbour faded, replaced by the quiet rhythm of their steps and the tap of Poirot's cane. Hastings thought of the letter Miss Ward had shared, Margaret's words of sorrow and love, and felt a pang for the lives touched by this tragedy. What will become of Miss Ward, do you think? That letter, it gave her closure, but it's a bitter kind. Poirot's expression softened.
She will mourn, yes, but she will live for Margaret, as Margaret wished. In time, the pain will become a memory, and the memory a strength. As they reached the station, a train whistle pierced the evening, signaling their departure. Hastings glanced back at the harbor, the sapphire yacht a distant silhouette. And the yacht? It's a beautiful thing, but it'll always carry this story. Poirot nodded, adjusting his hat. The yacht. It is a vessel of luxury, but now also of truth. It will sail again, carry new passengers, new stories. But for us, it is a chapter closed, a case solved by the little gray cells. They boarded the train, settling into a quiet compartment. The carriage rattled to life, pulling away from Torquay, the sea fading into the distance. Hastings leaned back, his mind replaying the case, the bloodied gloves, the cry that wasn't Sir Reginald's, the photograph that unlocked Fraser's motive. "You were brilliant, Poirot," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. "The way you pieced it together, the dagger, the note, Fraser's handwriting. I don't know how you do it." Poirot's smile was modest, but proud. "The method, mon ami. Order and method. The clues, they are like stars in a constellation, scattered but connected. The little gray cells, they see the pattern, and the pattern reveals the truth. Dr. Fraser, he sought to outwit Poirot, but no one outwits the truth." Hastings chuckled. "And now, back to London, a hot meal, a rest?" Poirot's eyes twinkled with mischief. "A tisane, certainly, and perhaps a quiet evening. But the world, it is full of mysteries, Hastings. Hercule Poirot, he does not rest for long." As the train wound through the darkening countryside, the lights of Torquay vanished behind them. The sapphire yacht was a memory now, a stage where Poirot's genius had triumphed over deceit. Hastings felt a quiet pride in his friend, whose relentless pursuit of truth had brought justice to a tangled web of love and betrayal. The case was closed, but the story of Hercule Poirot, with his little gray cells and unyielding moral compass, was far from over. The compartment fell silent, save for the rhythmic clatter of the train. Poirot gazed out the window, his expression serene, as if already contemplating the next puzzle. Hastings, content to let the moment linger, knew that wherever they went, the truth would follow, guided by the inimitable Hercule Poirot.